Hello YouTube, Wes here. If you're new here, thanks for clicking on this video. It's a different topic than I normally talk about. Normally talk about vinyl records and fun stuff like that here on the channel. But today we're talking about the Cisco CCNA certification, specifically the 200-301, the current certification as of making this video. So a few weeks ago, I actually sat for the Cisco CCNA and I did pass, and I'm very, very happy for that. It's been a long time studying for it, getting ready for it, prepping myself for it. One of the more difficult tasks I've taken on in my life, in my career, and I'm proud to say that I was successful in passing the CCNA on my first try. And I wanted to share my experience, my thoughts. I wanted to share some study tips. Maybe you're thinking about getting a CCNA for yourself. Maybe you're currently already studying for the CCNA. Maybe you're getting ready to take the test. Maybe you've already taken it and you want to hear other people's experiences. That's what this channel is for me, just sharing my experiences in life, and this is one of them. So I'm going to share it here on my channel. A little bit different topic than we normally talk about, but that's okay. What is the Cisco CCNA 200-301? And it's the Cisco Certified Networking Associate. It's the entry-level certification for working with Cisco networking equipment. Routers, switches, firewalls, all the things involved in setting up and configuring those things and making a network both fast and secure. All those things that are involved in that is quite a deep topic. There's a lot more to it than you might think. But this is an entry level. We'll get into that some more. It's an entry level, but it is a very, as I said, it's a very broad topic. You do have to know quite a bit about a lot of different topics in order to be successful in the CCNA exam. So calling it entry level is maybe a bit of a misnomer. It definitely helps if you have a bit of a background in IT type work, IT type things, but it's not necessary. It's definitely possible to do without having any background in IT. I will quickly share my background in IT just to get an idea of where I'm coming from. I started out in IT in 1997, and I started out at a university installing Cat5 networking cable. We did a little bit of fiber optics, but the majority of what we did was converting the buildings from the older, more proprietary type networking. There were some IBM networking that was proprietary back in those days. Some old coaxial token ring type networking, and transitioning to Ethernet based, typical stuff that we're all used to here today with RJ45 plugs, and you probably have a router in your home when you're watching this maybe, or you've used one before where you have those plugs and you plug in an Ethernet cable and plug it into your computer, and you can be able to talk to your router and your modem and whatever, and you can get on the internet, access other computers in your network, all those kind of things that networking allows. So yeah, I started out doing that in the late 90s. Did that for about 4 years, and then I transitioned into a programmer position, kind of an entry-level programmer position, where I was mainly monitoring programs that were running on a IBM mainframe. Sort of monitor those programs when they crashed. I would either have to sort of try to figure out what the problem was and fix it myself, or more often than not, I would have to call one of the main programmers and have them sort of walk me through what was going on, or they were able to log in from home and check things out themselves. But as time went on, I learned more and more about programming, and I got more comfortable with it, and I was able to fix more things on my own. And I moved into a daytime programmer, one of those daytime programmer positions. So I did mainframe programming for about 20 years. I did it for quite a long time. I really did enjoy the sort of constraint of being in that mainframe kind of system. It can be quite limiting, but yet that limit allows you to really sort of push the boundaries of what things can do and kind of think outside the box, and you don't necessarily have other options. You kind of have to figure out how to make that particular software programming environment do what you want it to do. So I really enjoyed being a mainframe programmer. As time went on, the university I was working at stopped using the mainframe, and so that position went away for me. And so I found myself kind of trying to decide whether I wanted to move into more modern kind of enterprise systems kind of programming, or if I wanted to do something completely different. And at that point, I'd been doing mainframe programming for 20 years. It's a desk job. I really like working with my hands. I like building things. I like doing technical type things for work and for enjoyment. And I build furniture, and I work on cars, and I do all kinds of interesting stuff. Work on different electronic devices and stuff. So I like working on physical things, physical hardware. So that kind of had me sort of thinking about moving back into more of something to do with, infrastructure kind of things, for working with, hardware, going back. I continued to do networking jobs over the years, even while I was a mainframe programmer, I would do networking jobs on the side, sort of just because I enjoyed doing it. It's something I'm good at, something I'm knowledgeable about, skill I have, and it's a skill that people need. So sort of kept my toes in the water there as far as the networking stuff, and I always enjoyed doing it. So I ended up seeking out a position as a data center technician, and ended up getting that position, and that did require me to get my CCNA. So that leads me to where we are now, is where I was able to study for and get my CCNA in order to be able to be full-time in this position as a data center technician. So that's sort of my background in IT. It's different, but yet, there's a lot of different ways to get into IT. There's a lot of different ways to work your way up in IT. That's just what worked for me. That's how things worked for me. I was lucky in a lot of aspects, getting my foot in the door initially, doing the network cabling, and then just sort of again getting my foot in the door as sort of an entry-level programmer, and working my way up through that without any kind of formal training, just learning on my own. And it's very helpful to an organization that uses Cisco networking equipment, even though Ethernet is kind of a standard. So what works on Cisco also works on other brands. They all have to talk to each other, have to interoperate with each other. So maybe there's some slight differences here and there between different brands, but in general it's a standard, and they all have to work together. So it can be helpful, even though you're learning Cisco terms and Cisco commands. You need to know how to do those same kind of things and how they work on other brands as well. And they work the same on all the brands, all the different companies, but maybe the terminology might be slightly different. The commands that you're entering into the switches and routers and whatnot are going to be slightly different between brands. But overall, the way things work is the same. So it's helpful in that respect. And the CCNA is going to get you kind of on the ground level of networking. You're going to be able to, log into a switch or a router and configure it, and, do security and do things that help with performance, and verify problems, and work through problems and solve problems. And in a lot of cases, if the network's small enough, you can be the network engineer for an organization with a CCNA. It definitely is fully involved. You'll be capable of setting up, securing, and configuring a network once you're done with this studying and passing this exam. So it's entry level in the fact that it's kind of the beginning of things. There are higher levels, but it is not entry level in the fact that you're going to know a lot when you're done with the CCNA. You're going to be pretty well set up to take off and take command of a smaller network anyway, smaller organizations network, and be able to do the job. And they might not need anyone beyond that skill set. So it's entry level, but it's not, is what I'm saying. I hope I'm kind of making sense here. There are higher levels, but those are really only required in much larger networks, and you certainly can get by with just a CCNA. But that's kind of basically what the CCNA is. Who is the CCNA for? And it's for anyone with an interest in getting into networking, configuring a network, setting up a network, securing a network, fixing problems on a network, all those kind of things. It's a lot of command line entry kind of stuff. It's a lot of it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of research. If you're really a detail-oriented person that enjoys digging deep into a task and really planning things out and setting things up and documenting things really well, CCNA would be a good path for you. It's good. It's a good career path and a good certification to get. So prerequisites. There are no prerequisites for the CCNA. As I said, it's an entry-level certification. Don't need to have any prior certifications. If you want to go on to get like a CCNP, the Cisco Certified Network Professional, that requires a CCNA. So this is kind of the entry level into networking. So there are no prerequisites for this. It helps to have a general knowledge of basics of computer networking, know what a switch and a router are and how things talk to each other a little bit. I didn't know a lot of that, even though I had decades of experience in IT. I kind of knew how things worked, but I didn't know anywhere near the depth that I know now after doing this. So it helps to have somewhat of a background, but it's not necessary. It's definitely possible without any IT background. Just means you're going to spend more time studying and more time learning the less background you have. If you've already been working on configuring switches and routers, maybe you've already been working in a data center, but you don't have taken the exam yet. Maybe you've logged into a switch or a router and done some commands and stuff like that. You're going to be way ahead of the game as far as knowing those commands and knowing how to do things. So it just depends on where you're at. You can start out with no knowledge whatsoever, or you can start off with lots of knowledge. The CCNA now versus previous versions. I can only talk about previous versions of the CCNA based on sort of anecdotal, from what I've heard from other people in the past. I know around 2019 they completely revamped the CCNA. It used to be a two-part exam. This is something I struggled with because what they did is they took all the topics from those two exams that comprise the CCNA and combined them into the current CCNA. And then they added in a few extra topics as well. So the CCNA now covers so many topics. You have switching and routing and security and software-defined networking, all these different topics. The list goes on in dozens and dozens of topics, and it was very stressful for me sort of studying all these topics, because you're learning things, but you're not necessarily fully comfortable in each topic. So as you're learning new things start to get sort of jumbled up. I found it very difficult, the amount of topics that were involved in the current CCNA. But yet again, I felt it was fair in the way in the way I was tested on the exam. I didn't feel like any of the learning was unfair. I didn't feel like there are a few things I felt maybe was unnecessary for an entry-level certification. But for the most part, I felt it was very fair. I felt the topics were very necessary to know, to be able to walk into a small to medium-sized network and be able to, handle things and take care of what you need to do and be able to be productive in that environment with the skills you learn studying for this exam. So while I found it very difficult with this new exam, how everything is all compiled into one exam, as well as some extra topics that weren't in there before. IT is always changing. There's always going to be new topics. There's always going to be new things coming around. So it is what it is. It's just, that was one of the things I kind of liked about being a mainframe programmer, is the mainframe. There weren't too many changes happening there. It was kind of nice to be able to sort of deep dive into what was there, because it came from the 60s and 70s when mainframe computing was sort of growing, and it had reached a very mature point at that point when I started in it. So it was nice to be able to really learn things without having to be bombarded by new things that were being added. So next thing I want to talk about is the exam itself. Did I think the current CCNA 200-301 was fair? And I thought it was very fair. I've watched a lot of these type of videos here on YouTube from other people, and they have all mentioned how fair it was, and I have to agree. I felt like I was tested on all the things that you would be tested on in a real environment. I felt the test was very good in the way it presented the questions. It can seem kind of tricky on the surface. You have to be really careful and really read and comprehend the questions. I'm going to get into that some more later on when I'm talking about how to study for things, how to practice for the exam, because you need to really know your stuff, and you really need to be on top of things to be able to properly comprehend the questions and decipher what it is they're testing you on that particular question, because you could have a question and there could be several correct answers, but you have to find the most correct answer in those instances, and it can be tricky if you're not paying close attention to how the question is worded and being able to comprehend what it is they're testing you on with that question. So, but I felt the exam was very fair. I came out of it, after I passed the exam, I came out of it, I was like, that was not easy. But I felt really good. I was like, I really do know this stuff. So that was a good thing. Okay, so in this next section of the video, I'd like to talk about my study resources, the study resources I used to study. So my main resource was right here on YouTube. There are tons and tons of video resources here on YouTube for Cisco CCNA topics. I'm going to suggest a few channels here for you. You can purchase video series from other places, and they're probably they could be better, they might not be better, but there are 3 channels I wanted to shout out here on YouTube that I mainly used for my studies. The first one, this was my main source of information, the main sort of syllabus, I guess you could say, is what I used for studying, and that was Jeremy's IT Lab. Jeremy's IT Lab channel. I'm going to have links to everything down in the show notes below, so don't worry about anything. After you're done watching this video, you can go down in the show notes, and there'll be links to all the books and the channels and anything else I've talked about here. So I'll put all that in there for you. So yeah, Jeremy's IT Lab is a 100% free, complete CCNA course. So it includes videos, flashcards, and practice labs. Excellent video series, very clearly and cleanly delivered, lots of detail, really excellent videos, really well taught. Jeremy is pretty new to the networking world. He's only been in the networking world for 5 or 6 years, I think, at this point. So he's still kind of a new thing to him. He's very much in tune with how people need to understand things. He's very much in tune with, people learning these things for the first time, learning these topics for the first time. And so he does a really excellent job in explaining things and teaching things. He's extremely knowledgeable, extremely detailed videos, very well produced videos. As I said, he also includes flashcards. You will have to sign up. You'll sign up on his channel, and he'll send you a link to a Google Drive that has the flashcards and the practice labs in it. But that's sort of a one-time thing, and then you'll have access to those things, and they were very helpful. So the flashcard, I did want to speak about the flashcards. That was an area where I felt the flashcards that Jeremy gives you are very helpful. I did find them very useful. I felt like there were too many. I spent a lot of time every day studying flashcards because at the end, I think the flashcard deck got up to around 2,500 cards or so. And I felt that was just too many. There were a lot of things in there that I really felt I didn't need to know for the exam. But when you're learning that stuff, it's kind of hard to know what you need to know and what you don't need to know. So it's really difficult to sort of give guidance on the flashcards. I will say try and use them, but try to keep up with them. Try to get rid of things you don't think you'll need to know. Maybe later on when you're doing some practice exams, you can find things that you find you did need to know, and you can study some of those flashcards. I'm kind of struggling to give you guidance on how to use the flashcards that Jeremy offers. The flashcards are good. There are just far too many of them, in my opinion. That was my experience, but they were good to use. And then he does also include packet tracer labs. Almost every video lesson includes at least one packet tracer lab. And packet tracer lab is a simulation environment that Cisco offers for free. It's completely free. You just have to sign up for the Cisco Learning Academy, I believe it is. I'll have a link to all that down below as well. So where you sign up to be able to use Packet Tracer, and then the labs are just small little files you download from Jeremy's Google site, and you'll be able to put those into Packet Tracer, and then the network will be there, and the instructions with what you need to do for that particular lab is there as well. And I will say with the labs, I wouldn't recommend spending a ton of time doing labs. Do some labs, definitely do some labs. Familiarize with yourself with the lab environment. Familiarize with yourself with inputting commands, doing things, but don't get too involved in doing labs unless that's the way you feel like you learn best. But I don't think it's necessary to do. I didn't do all the labs. I did several of the labs. I did many of the labs. There are topics I was struggling with. I did the labs. Did a lot of the labs at the beginning to sort of get myself familiar with using the command line and learning the basic commands and how to navigate a router or a switch and get to where I needed to get to be able to configure, the ports or whatever interface it was I needed to configure. So it was really handy in that respect to be able to use the labs. So I wouldn't dedicate a lot of time to labs, but definitely dedicate some time to labs. Okay, so that's Jeremy's IT Lab. As I said, that was my main video source for training, and I definitely highly recommend using that. Excellent series, and definitely recommend that. So the second channel I want to shout out here is Keith Barker. Keith Barker is also an excellent teacher. He actually happens to work for CBT Nuggets, and they have their own CCNA training course. But Keith Barker has a YouTube presence as well, and he does video topics on YouTube all about the CCNA. It's not necessarily a fully involved, start here and end here kind of training series, but he has videos on covering most of the topics of the CCNA. He also has Kahoot quiz videos on his channel. where you can kind of do practice quizzes, and it's kind of a fun environment, and you can sort of play along, and he's, at the end of a question, he'll explain why the answer was what it was, and those were really helpful for me. He has a whole series called Subnet Saturday that he did on subnetting. Definitely you need to know subnetting for the CCNA. We'll get into that more later, but you really need to know subnetting, and his subnetting videos were excellent. Definitely recommend checking out his Subnet Saturday videos. Check out his quizzes. Those are fun to do. Keith Barker was somebody I would watch sort of as more of a fun kind of educational kind of experiences. Jeremy's videos are very to the point, very deep dive educational kind of things. Not much in the way of entertainment, but Keith Barker videos are a little more entertaining, a little more fun to watch, maybe a little less educational, but still very educational. And so that definitely gave me kind of a more relaxing kind of, if I just wanted more of a lighter video to watch, I would watch some Keith Barker videos. And he has excellent videos. He's an excellent teacher as well, and I enjoyed watching his videos. Okay, so the last YouTube channel I want to talk about here is the videos from the channel Practical Networking, I believe is the name of it. And they have an excellent, very short, very quick video series called Subnetting Mastery, and they have as I said, a very quick and dirty way to do subnetting, and you're going to need to know how to do subnetting. I'll say that once again. I'm going to say it more times before the end of this video. You really need to know how to do subnetting to pass the CCNA, and this is going to be a way to learn how to do it very quickly, very efficiently. But I do recommend, before going to this quick way, I do recommend spending some time, spend time with those Keith Barker Subnetting Saturday videos, spend some time in the official cert guide learning subnetting, spend some time with Jeremy's IT Lab subnetting topic videos, understand why subnetting is what it is, understand as much as you can about subnetting before you go about trying to learn how to do it quickly. Because you might learn how to do it quickly, but you really don't understand. You won't really understand why you're doing what you're doing. If that makes sense. So I recommend really trying to understand, why you're subnetting, and then learn how to do it quickly. And those videos will definitely give you a way to learn how to do it very quickly. There's tips for a very quick cheat sheet you can draw when you go in to take your exam. You can write that out on your scratch paper that they give you at the testing center, and it'll be a quick way to do subnetting. But I do recommend spending time learning the hard way first, and then learn the fast way. Next, we're going to get into the books that I used, and pretty basic here. I used the official cert guides by Wendell Odom, and it's a 2-volume set. They're pretty thick books. As I said, there's lots of topics on this exam. You got to know some of the topics you have to know more about than others, but I mean it's quite involved. But these are the official cert guides by Wendell Odom. They're on the Cisco press. This is what Cisco says you need to know. That's what I feel is the best way if you're gonna use a book. You use the official cert guide. These are very well written. Just very well written. There's lots of diagrams and whatnot, and sort of images of command line interfaces, and what the commands are and what the output's going to look like, and where you need to look in the output to find certain things. Very helpful. These guides also include practice quizzes. There is a quiz before each chapter to kind of give you an idea. If you already have some IT experience, you can take a quiz before the chapter to kind of gauge your knowledge on each topic. and kind of decide, where you're at in that topic, and then get an idea of where you need to spend most of your time studying. This also includes a couple of videos, not very many videos. I wouldn't use this for video learning. As well as they do include two, if you buy both volumes, you do get 2 full practice exams, which are very helpful. We're going to get to that later on as far as practice exams, studying kind of things. That's definitely something I highly recommend. But yeah, definitely recommend the Official Cert Guides by Wendell Odom. If you're going to buy a book, that's what I recommend buying. The one other book that I did purchase and use is it's also an official Cisco book. This is 31 Days Before Your CCNA Exam. This one's by Alan Johnson, and this it is exactly what it sounds like. Each day is a chapter. Each day covers a topic, and it's basically a review book. So you're going through and reviewing each of the topics. Fairly quick to read. Some of them were longer than others. One thing I will say, if you do choose to use this, I say start this more than 31 days before your exam. There were some topics for me that I felt like I should have maybe spent 2 days on. There were a couple days during those 31 days where I either didn't feel like reviewing or just life got too busy and I just couldn't find time to review. So at the end of it, I was kind of cramming in the last few topics. So I definitely recommend starting maybe 34 or 35 days before your exam with this book. But excellent way to sort of use this as a guided review, give you an idea of where you're at, how you're understanding things, sort of revisit some of those topics that you learned when you started out studying and maybe you haven't necessarily studied in a while. This kind of gives you a review and makes sure you still really remember what you need to remember about these topics. But yeah, this was definitely a worthwhile book to pick up, and I definitely recommend using that as well. The one sort of knock I'll say on this book is that some of the sections were a lot longer than others, I found, and I wish they had tried to make each day exactly the same length as far as the time it would take you to read, at least just to make it a little bit easier to sort of plan out your review. Some of these topics, it seemed like it took me a lot longer than others to get through as far as the amount of pages and the amount of text that were there. So I wish they had evened things out a little more. I know it's difficult, but that was just one of the things I wanted to put as a mention as a negative for this book, is that the topics are not the same length, and sometimes things felt like they were longer than they should have been. And that's another reason I say start more than 31 days before your exam, is maybe you want to take one of those, some of those longer topics and spread them out over 2 days, whatever it is. But definitely, it was a good way to review. I just say give yourself more than 31 days to use this in review. Okay, so for this next section of the video, I wanted to talk about what do you need to know? Where do you need to be to take and successfully pass the exam? And thankfully, Cisco gives you a roadmap to use for this exam. I'll give a link, and again, there'll be a link in the show notes to this. This is downloadable from Cisco's website. They're not trying to hide anything. These are all the topics on the exam. It tells you whether you need to just be able to understand how that particular technology works, or whether you need to be able to actually configure and troubleshoot that topic. Network fundamentals, explain the role and function of network components, describe the characteristics of network topology architectures, compare physical interfaces and cabling type, configure and verify IPv4 addressing and subnetting. This list goes on and on of all the different topics that you need to know. You need to be able to understand. It tells you whether you need to be able to just explain something, or whether you need to be able to configure something. And if something says configure, maybe that's a time where you want to go in and do those labs and actually go in and do the configuration on that particular, whether you're doing spanning tree protocol or whatever topic it may be. go in and actually do that configuration and learn how to do that and understand how that works. So this kind of gives you a really good roadmap of what you need to know. I will say, I said it before, I'll say it again, you need to know how to do subnetting quickly. Learn the basics, learn how it works, understand how it works, then learn that cheat sheet, learn how to do it quickly, and get that nailed down. Take the time to practice. It takes time. You're just gonna have to do it. It's not that difficult. It's possible to do, and once you get it, it's gonna be easy like that, and you'll be happy you did. Another thing you definitely want to learn how to do is you need to be able to read a routing table and understand all the different aspects of a routing table. You need to know, a packet destined for this IP address. What's the router going to do when it gets this packet? You have to be able to look at the routing table and say it's going to go out on this interface. It's going to use this protocol, whatever it may be, or go out on this interface that it learned via this protocol. You have to know all those kind of things. You need to be real familiar with looking at and reading routing tables and understanding routing tables and figuring out what the router is going to do with a packet that it receives. So get real familiar with reading routing tables and learning, practicing routing tables and reading them and understanding the different routing protocols, and as I said, understanding the different administrative distances and all that kind of stuff you'll need to know. So definitely know those things. As far as the other topics, there's some of the newer topics like software-defined networking and virtualization. Yeah, you got to know some of that stuff. They're going to test you on that stuff. You definitely want to know it. All the topics that are presented, I felt like I was tested on all those. Everything on this roadmap, I felt I was tested on in some way or another. So, there's nothing that's off limits. They're going to test you on all of it. You definitely need to know, at least a basic understanding of everything, and some things you need to know a deeper understanding where it says, configure and verify and troubleshoot and that kind of thing. Definitely need to know those topics deeper. So definitely, get your subnetting good, learn how to read a routing table really well, and learn as much as you can about the other topics and understand the other topics as well. That's my suggestion for what you need to know for the exam. Okay, so the next section of the video is going to be about practicing for the exam. Definitely something I highly recommend you do, particularly if you're someone like me. I have not taken an exam for anything in literally decades. I'm literally not this century. I have not taken an exam for anything. So it's been a long time since I've done that, been in that environment, been in that pressure time kind of environment. So it's been a long time since I've had to sit down and take an exam and sort of comprehend questions and try to understand what I was being tested on, to be able to figure out what the answer was. Because there are a lot of questions on this exam that are like that, where it's not going to ask you straightforward questions. It's going to be kind of vague, maybe slightly, I wouldn't say misleading, but maybe misguiding a bit, to where if you really don't know the stuff, you might be guided in the wrong direction towards the wrong answer. So definitely I recommend taking as many practice exams as you can. As I said, if you buy the official cert guides, these come with practice exams that are good. Get you some very close to test type questions. There are some third-party exams that you can purchase from places like Boson that are highly recommended. I did not use those. I probably should have. I felt like I probably should have spent more time doing practice exams. That was kind of a hesitation that I got near the end when I started doing practice exams, and I was struggling with that, sort of comprehending the question and trying to really suss out what they were testing me on and be able to find the right answer that way, rather than As I said, the questions are not necessarily going to be straightforward. It's not going to say, what is the administrative distance for OSPF? It's not going to ask you straightforward questions like that. It's going to be a lot more obscured in the way they're asking you how to find that. So you really need practice taking tests. It's weird. Maybe if you're someone who has taken tests more recently, taking exams more recently than I have, then it won't be as difficult for you. But definitely, if you're like me and you haven't taken an exam in a long time, definitely spend as much time as you can with practice exams and get to know how the questions are going to be asked, so you can really understand how to read them and how to understand them and how to comprehend them. And also definitely use the there are some, I'll put some subnetting. If you're struggling with subnetting, there are several websites that have some great subnetting questions that can get you to where you get quick with understanding subnetting. And they have different types of subnetting questions, which are good, not just straightforward stuff, a little bit more detailed, where you have to figure out what subnet address is going to be in, and what's the default gateway for this address, and all that kind of stuff. So really good questions and really great free websites. I'll put some of those down in the notes below as well for practicing subnetting. So yeah, I do recommend setting aside a good bit of time practicing exams and practicing taking a test, especially if you're like me and you haven't done it in a long time. Okay, and so this last section of the video I want to talk about is the test day. I'll talk a little bit about my testing experience and give you some tips on what to do on test day. I took my test at a local testing center. It was at a community college near me. I scheduled my test in the early afternoon, as I felt that was the best time for me as far as being awake and being at my best. Is kind of in the middle, early afternoon kind of time. So that's when I scheduled my exam for, and I got to the testing center more than an hour before my exam. Gave myself plenty of time to get there, figure out where the testing center was on the community college where I was taking it at. I took some time to just walk around and explore the community college campus there and enjoy being outside, and took some pictures with my phone and just relaxed and enjoyed the outside, because I was going to be stuck inside taking the test for the next few hours. So just got relaxed. I don't recommend cramming for this exam or any exam really. Marathon runners, they don't run a marathon to get ready for a marathon. You kind of have to be ready the day before, get ready before the exam, and then just go in there. Don't cram, just go in there and be ready to burst out of the starting gate and just kill it, just crush it. Go in there and crush that exam is my suggestion. Just, save up all you have. This is your time. This is your time to deliver. This is your time to be the best you can. Save it all up and be ready to go right from the start. So yeah, definitely be prepared. If you need reading glasses, make sure you have those with you. You might want to bring a set of earplugs with you. Make sure you've practiced your subnetting cheat sheet so you can write that out easily and quickly when you get there. When you first start taking your exam, then you'll be able to use your notes, not your notes, but you get basically a whiteboard and some dry erase markers, and you can use that to sort of calculate things and do your subnetting and do whatever else. If you are taking the exam from home on your computer, there is a section for doing notes on each question, I believe, but when you go to the next question, that all goes away, so it's a little more difficult. I definitely recommend going to an exam center if you can, just because it's a more controlled environment. You don't have to worry about distractions there. You just go in there. It doesn't cost any more or any less. Just, go there. It's a controlled environment. There's no questions. And just go in there and kill it. Like I said, get there way, way, way early. You don't want to have any excuses. You don't want to have any rushes. You don't have any reasons to be flustered or be nervous about things. Just, get to where you need to be to take your exam, and then just relax and do some enjoying. Put on some music, walk around, do whatever you need to do to get in the zone to be ready to crush that exam. So yeah, you do have, the exams are typically between 100 and 103 questions. They are multiple choice with one answer, multiple choice with multiple answers, and drag and drop I believe were the three types of questions. So yeah, multiple choice, one answer, it'll tell you if there's more than one answer. So be careful when you're reading the questions. Make sure if it says choose two, that you choose two. Make sure you don't choose three. Make sure you don't choose one. Make sure you choose two. If it doesn't say choose two or choose three or whatever, that means there's only one answer. So choose one answer and then hit next. You can't go back. You can't skip a question. You have to answer every question. And then the drag and drop are just, you're dragging boxes and sort of putting them usually putting them in certain order, or putting sort of different things with matching up with, bigger topics kind of things. You'll do some of those when you do the practice exams. So again, definitely recommend doing as much practice examining as you can. So yeah, that's it. Those are my suggestions for study materials to use, how to study, things you need to know, all those sort of things. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me in the comment section down below. I'll try to answer any questions I am able to. I can't talk about anything that was specifically on my test. Not that it would matter to you, because your test is going to be different. And so it doesn't really matter what was on my test. Just learn the topics, learn the materials, and you'll be fine. So thank you very much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. I hope it was helpful to you. Good luck. Go in there and kill it. And thanks for watching. Cheers.